Today is actually my rescue dog's birthday, so Ava is turning 6 years old today, and she actually had surgery last week for some fractured teeth. And considering that she used to be a serious bite risk at the vets, and the surgery last week went really smoothly, it sort of got me reflecting between that and her birthday on her journey and how different her life is from where she was when I first got her, and also all the things that she has taught me along the way, all the things I learned from helping her through her fear aggression. And I wanted to share some of that in this video with you here today as a form of hopefully inspiration if you have a dog that is anything like Ava used to be, and also informative so you can learn from all the things I learned from her and all the mistakes that I made you can avoid, and you can help your dog live a better life no matter what level of fear-based aggression you might be dealing with. So Ava was not the first fearful rescue dog I'd had. I got my start in dog training fostering Romanian rescue dogs, and so I had dealt with a lot of fear-based reactivity, separation anxiety, resource guarding, fear of having a lead put on or going outside, fear of handling and grooming and vet visits and all those kind of things. So I was pretty well versed in dealing with nervous behaviors and in dealing with dogs that were fearful and perhaps borderline fear aggressive. But Ava was no doubt the worst I had ever had in terms of how severe her fear-based aggression was. And she was also a really severe resource guarder. And so just to give you an idea of the starting point for us, I was sent this video when I was asked, would you foster this dog? Otherwise she's going to be put down. And so this was the video I got, essentially showing that she is being extremely standoffish and extremely forward aggressive with this person. And apparently this was because she'd been asked to go in the crate that is here. And so then she got really aggressive, but all out of nervousness. You can see in her body language here when she moves away, like she just doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know what's expected of her. She was absolutely terrified. And so basically the situation she'd come from, she had been bought by a family as a lockdown puppy, very likely from poor breeding. So she is genetically insecure, genetically nervous. And then that family didn't really know what they were doing. I don't think they'd had a dog before, didn't really have the time for her, didn't really do any training. And so they couldn't train her to walk well on a lead. They kind of didn't take her on any walks. They didn't take her to the vet for her vaccinations as a young puppy. When she came to me, she recognized her name and maybe knew sit, but she really hadn't been taught anything. She really didn't know anything. And so she was a genetically nervous, insecure dog that had had zero skills building or confidence building or socialization all through puppyhood. And so all of that insecurity and all of that nervousness in her really was exacerbated because of that. And when she came to me, she was afraid of pretty much everything. I had been told she was really just a resource guarder and that she didn't like the crate, but she was fear-based aggressive about everything. So touching her neck to put a collar or a lead on or off, she would bite for that. If you tried to pick up a leg or towel dry a paw, she would bite for that. She'd bite the towel as it came towards her. She was afraid of stairs, and if you tried to ask her to go upstairs, she would get aggressive, trying to ask her to jump in the car. The first time she came up the lead at me, trying to attack me. Shiny floors, she would refuse to walk on, and if you really pushed it, she would bite. Basically, she learned with this previous family, I think through initially resource guarding incidents, that biting worked. Biting would buy her space. And so if something scary was happening, someone was trying to trim her toenails, or someone was trying to put a lead on her, anything that she deemed to be scary because she didn't know what was happening, she didn't trust anybody, she learned that in those situations she could just turn to aggression and that it would work. I'm not sure it's quite possible that she was punished for growling, because when she came to me she would skip growling entirely. There would be very little warning period of when she was going to bite. She would have about a half a second of frozen body language, maybe some whale eye, and then she would immediately bite. And so for me, in those early days with her, I did get bitten a lot because I didn't know what all of her triggers were. I didn't know all of the things she was afraid of. And I basically only found out because she would bite me for them. And so there were a lot of incidents in the early days where she attempted to bite me She did attempt to bite me a lot more than she was successful. Luckily, I had enough handling experience by then and I knew what I was doing. And so out of the maybe 24 times that she tried to bite me, she was only successful on three serious bites and two other sort of very minor bites. But these were two of the three more serious bites where you can see I actually have open wounds and teeth marks in my hand because she was very, very serious about those bites. And so those early days, those first few weeks were extremely stressful for her and for me as we tried to figure out everything that she was afraid of, everything that was a no-go for her. And basically before coming to me, she'd had no positive relationship with any people. She'd lived in a house with people and she'd bitten those people a lot. Those people were scared of her, including children in the house, but she didn't have any trust in people. She didn't have any two-way communication with anybody. And so she sort of was on her own in the world and lashing out in fear whenever anything challenged her. And she had zero self-confidence or self-esteem, zero trust, and was very, very bitey in those early days. And so then let's fast forward to what her life looks like now. These are just a few pictures of sort of showing what her life is like. So we've gone on plenty of holidays together. She's been with me to the Isle of Mull, the Isle of Skye. So she's traveled around quite a bit, a bunch of different places in the UK. And she's a wonderful holiday dog these days and gets to go many different places. She's a great cafe or pub dog. Although I did make the mistake of giving her a chip in a pub once, and now she does unfortunately create a very severe drool puddle whenever we go to a pub because she is forever hopeful she will get another chip. So learn from my mistake, don't do that. Don't feed your dog when you're in a cafe or pub, or if your dog is as food obsessed as she is, then they'll never forget about it. We go on countless hikes all over the place. Most of our walks, Ava is off lead and enjoys off lead freedom and gets to run around and sniff and have zoomies and be a dog. When I used to work a 9-to-5 job, she would come into the office with me and she was an absolutely fabulous office dog, very sociable and friendly with everybody there. You would never know, and the people in the office would never have known that she had a history of being nervous and to the point of being aggressive because she was just a big softie and everybody in the office absolutely loved to see her. She's helped me with countless other dogs. So when I first adopted Ava, I was doing dog sitting at the time. And so she would always help me with other dogs that were coming and going, or we'd go and stay in other people's houses and dog sit for them. And she was great at adapting to that change. Initially, back when she was new with me, that would have been a complete upset for her. But once she had learned resilience and we'd worked on her behavior, she's been super adaptable to foster dogs coming and going and boarding dogs and us going to different people's houses. And she's been absolutely fabulous. She's an amazing stooge dog now and helps me when I have clients with reactive dogs. She's always the perfect stooge because she is calm, quiet, reliable, very neutral. She doesn't put pressure on other dogs. She's got great dog social skills these days, and I trust her with difficult dogs and making really great decisions. And her confidence is unlike anything it was before. Back in the day when she was new with me, she wouldn't even walk over like a drain cover on the side of the road. She'd have to walk around it because she lacked confidence in interacting with anything new or unusual. And just recently on a pack walk that I hosted, we had all the dogs jump up onto a big stone structure to take a group photo. And Ava decided to climb up onto the highest bit of that stone structure and then even decided after the photo was done that she was going to leap from the top of that stone structure, and she leapt down from there with not a worry in the world. To think that she would never have even thought she was possible of doing that kind of thing a few years ago is really, really amazing. So she lives a completely different life now, a better life than most dogs. And you would never know meeting her today that she used to have this history of biting and aggression and being shut down and fearful and nervous. She's just such a happy-go-lucky girl. And like I said, she was in the vets for surgery last week. And the vet scene was sort of like, I call it the last frontier with her. She used to pancake to the floor, scramble for the door. She would bite anybody who came near her at the vets, including me back in the day. But now she is very comfortable at the vet's. She even like cuddles up to the vet and asks for belly rub and says hi to them now. Even after her surgery on her teeth, she was cuddling up to the surgeon in our post-op meeting before she came home. So she's absolutely done a 180 and is a completely different dog than she was before. And so I want to give advice on what worked, so that if you have a fearful or aggressive nervous dog, that you can basically learn from what she taught me, and you can help your dog through sort of similar issues. So before I get into what actually worked to help her, I want to talk about things that didn't work. So when I first had her, you know, everybody offers their 2 cents and everybody gives advice on what you should do. And so these are various pieces of advice that I was given. And if you have a dog that is in any way similar, it's advice maybe you've heard. And I want to talk about why you shouldn't follow these particular pieces of advice. So I was told to avoid triggers. That was very practically impossible with her, right? She was afraid of literally everything. She was afraid of me putting a collar on her. So avoiding triggers completely was not an option because that was impractical. She was not going to live any kind of life. We weren't going to get to know each other at all if we just avoided all of her triggers, because her triggers were literally everything. So just avoidance was not going to be the answer. It just was not practical. I was told, just give it time. The problem with this advice of just give it time is that Ava was the kind of dog that until that point in her life, like I said, she'd never had any positive relationship with a human. She didn't know what she was missing out on by not interacting with me at all. And she felt that it was just better, it was in her best interest to just avoid me completely, avoid interacting with me completely, avoid doing anything challenging. And there was no amount of time that was going to change her perspective on that, because that was all she knew up until that point in her life. And so I had to actually take action to change her mind about whether it was worth interacting with people or not. Just giving it time she was just going to be stuck where she was. If I gave it time, I would have been giving it time forever. She would not have improved left to her own devices. She had no incentive to change her ways on her own. A positive only approach. So there's a lot of talk in the dog space about positive only, force free. It goes by different names, but essentially not using any corrections or aversives and never telling the dog no. That in theory is a really nice way to approach dog training. I think everybody would agree it would be lovely if we could only just be positive always in our training. But I had these serious bite attempts from her that were completely unacceptable, extremely dangerous to both my safety and well-being and also to her life. If she had just kept on biting and we didn't solve that, she absolutely would have had to have been put down. She was a very dangerous dog at that point. And so I had to take the approach of putting my safety first and her long-term safety first. And in those moments when she tried to bite me, I couldn't be positive only. Throwing sausages at her in those moments was not going to help. And I did have to use corrections in those moments to show her that that was unacceptable behavior. Now, how I did that was very specialized, and I don't recommend that if you have a dog that is getting aggressive out of fear that you just start correcting them. Doing that often makes the situation worse, because then you're just adding conflict to a conflict generating situation, and it only escalates the dog's aggression in those cases. So I had to go about this really, really carefully, and I had to use a approach where she did not know that the correction was in any way related to me. It was something that just happened, sort of disconnected from me, and that sort of like broke her concentration, got her out of sort of that red zone, and made it so that she took a second to think. And it bought me just enough time to either remove myself from the situation and make myself safe, or to direct her into appropriate behavior for that situation. So unfortunately, positive only wasn't going to work. I was only able to stop the aggressive behavior in those moments with negative approaches. But again, I'm not saying that you should go out and do that on your own. It definitely needs to be done under the guidance of a professional so that you don't make things worse, because things like timing and the nature of the correction and how you issue it are extremely important to getting that right. And then the last one was just medicate. So A lot of people advise with dogs like this to just medicate the dog, and that the medication will make them sort of more docile or more susceptible to training, and that you just need to wait for the medication to work. But Ava actually arrived with me already on a high dosage of a behavioral medication, and it obviously wasn't helping because I was still getting, having multiple bite attempts per day in those early days. So I didn't see that the medication was helping really at all. And actually, when I took her off the medication, I saw her behavior improve. I think the medication, the one that she was on in particular, did not make her feel very good. And I think she felt a bit out of sorts on it. And I think if anything, that only added to her constant state of stress and anxiety because she did not feel right in herself. She knew that something was off. And so actually taking her off the medication in her case was a better approach. But there's no situation in which medication replaces training. Only training can build a communication system, build trust, build confidence. Medication can't do those things for you. And while for some dogs, medication can give you sort of a window in or a foot in the door to be able to start working with that dog, in her case, it actually made sort of starting that process harder for her. And so it is very much a dog-to-dog situation. And the blanket advice of just medicate is not good advice. If anybody tells you just to medicate your dog and they are not a professional and they don't know your situation, they haven't spent extensive time talking about your training first with you, please run away from that advice. All right, so let's talk about the things I did that actually helped. So number one is hand feeding. So basically this means taking part or all of your dog's daily meals, and instead of just putting it down to them in a bowl, you feed them from your hand. And this is amazing because it allows you to build communication and to build relationship with your dog. So basically when you're starting from ground zero and you have no relationship with this dog, if this dog has no trust in you, basically one of their basic necessities is that they have to eat, right? And so we can use that as like a foot in the door to get started by just associating us with something they want and need, which is food. And by doing that, by teaching them to eat from your hand initially with no requirements, it just builds a little bit of a positive association with you and builds a little bit of trust of like, hey, I mean good things for you, or me being close to you is a good thing for you. But then by doing that and getting them used to this hand feeding, we can use that time to start building communication and start building relationship. And so we can start putting requirements on our hand feeding. We start adding markers and we start adding behaviors and teaching something, and that sort of builds that two-way communication of us asking for something, the dog doing something or learning something, and then us giving them a reward. It starts that process of just having some sort of relationship in which they see, oh, you have value and you can teach me things and you can communicate in a way I understand, and we start really building that communication, that relationship from ground zero. And so this is something I didn't just do with Ava. I did this with all of my previous foster dogs. When you're looking to build a brand new relationship from scratch, I always go to hand feeding first because it is just the quickest and most efficient way to start building something more in the relationship between you other than a dog that just lives in your house. And then the next thing I did was play. So play is great because it builds trust and confidence. So similar to hand feeding, that it can give you a window into the dog's world and show them that you are valuable. But specifically when we do cooperative play and we start to teach the dog that working with us in a cooperative manner is really fulfilling and really enjoyable, then that really builds solid trust between the two of you. And we can also use play to build their confidence by winning in play and showing them that they can be successful and they can be powerful and they can have fun with us as the conduit of that. That really builds their confidence in both themselves and their confidence with you as a handler. And then the third step was tackling difficult situations together. So like I said, people had given me advice to just avoid all triggers. So not only was that just not possible, but in the long term, your dog never learns to overcome difficult situations if you don't tackle them. So after you establish the the right kind of communication and relationship through hand feeding, and you can establish the right kind of trust and confidence through play, you then have the right type of foundations in place to then go and tackle all the difficult situations. So once I had some communication and some confidence and relationship in place, I could then start taking Ava through drills of jumping in and out of the back of my car, for example. A situation she used to put on the brakes and absolutely refused, and if you insisted, she would just come up the lead and try to bite. And so then we could work through those situations together in a way where I could communicate to her what I wanted and communicate guidance and help to her in that situation. But also we'd built the kind of relationship in which she trusted me in that moment enough to say, okay, like if you're asking me to do this, then I think it's okay, and I can trust you to just follow you through this situation. And she had enough confidence in herself to finally believe that she was capable of doing something like jumping into the back of the car, because that was definitely part of it. She had no self-confidence. She didn't believe she could do something like that. And so she would absolutely refuse to try, and then would get defensive. And again, she'd learned to bite to get out of situations. So she was thinking, oh, this is too difficult. I can't do this. But if I try to bite you, it'll end the situation. I can get out of it. And so we had to then change that situation, go into all of these difficult situations. We had to practice putting her collar on and on, towel drying her paws, walking up and down stairs, nail trims, all these things that she'd previously found super terrifying and super impossible in her mind. We then tackled together, relying on that communication, that trust, and that confidence that we had built together to show her that actually you can get through these situations if you have me helping you. That's what I'm here to do. And so I think the lesson here is that in working with owners of nervous dogs, because that's what I specialize in, I see that too many people get stuck in the extremes. So some people are stuck on the just give it time side, where they're just giving the dog time, or maybe they believe it's just part of their dog's personality, or they'll always be that way. And so they're not really taking any positive action, like proactive action to help the dog. And so you're seeing no progress. Like I said, for dogs like Ava, they've got no reason, no incentive to make change by themselves. If you just give them time, more often than not, they're really just going to stay stuck as they are. And so a lot of people are stuck there, not knowing what to do or how to push things forward and how to make progress. And then I also see people on the other end of the spectrum where they know that they need to, they've been told they need to build the dog's confidence, you need to challenge the dog, you need to work through difficult situations, you need to expose them to the things that they're afraid of, etc. But a lot of people jump to those situations too quickly, and they're actually making it worse. Because if you are challenging your dog, and if you're trying to do confidence building exercises, and you're trying to push the boundaries of their comfort zone, you're trying to help them overcome their fears through exposure, but you haven't put in the time for the trust and the bond and the confidence together, then you are only making things worse. If you're putting your dog into really challenging situations without the skills and the guidance to overcome those situations, you're only reinforcing for them that the situation is scary or the situation is too difficult, and they're going to come out of that feeling even worse than they were before. So some people are stuck making zero progress, and some people are really putting in the work and trying, but they're actually making things worse. And so where progress is made is in this middle area. So on those two extremes, there's either no progress being made or we're even making it worse. And I also want to add that when we say that there's no progress being made, that also is actually making things worse, because the longer your dog spends stuck in a habit or a certain way of doing things, the more ingrained that becomes, and that actually does make things worse over the long term. So sort of both ends of the spectrum here are making things worse over time, but it's in the middle where progress is made. We have to be somewhere between giving them time and challenging them. And the way we make that meet in the middle is that we do challenge them, but only once we've built the right foundations, and we only challenge them at the pace that is right for where they are. So we don't jump straight to, when I was working with Ava in those early days, we didn't jump straight to, going into the vets and trying to work on her, being given an injection or something like that. That was like the most difficult level for her. We started with all the little things like the putting on the collar, or walking on a shiny floor, going in and out of the crate, going in and out of the car, and those kind of smaller challenges. And by doing those easier challenges, I had to find what was easier and more difficult for her. And we tackled all the easier things first. And the more easy things she was able to overcome, the more confidence and the more trust she had for us to then be successful in tackling the difficult things. And like I said, she literally had surgery last week where she had to be given a sedative and be handled by both myself and unfamiliar people in a brand new vet's office she'd never been to before. She was under anesthetic and taken for her surgery. And then even after her surgery, waking up, she allowed me and the surgeon to handle her for a final injection. And she then even, with the muzzle off afterwards, was able to go and say hi to the vet and cuddle up to this woman she literally met that day who had stabbed her with a needle and done surgery on her, and she didn't otherwise know her. And she was able to say hi. That, for me, was Ava's number one most difficult situation. And we would never have started there because it would have been an absolute disaster. She would not have been set up for success. So that has always been our last frontier because that's always been her most difficult situation. So you have to figure out that sort of progression that is going to be unique to your dog. What things do they find a little challenging and what things do they find most challenging? We have to work our way up as their skills develop and as their confidence and trust in you grows over time. And so that's where this middle part on the scale is so important, to make sure that you have all the pieces in place while still moving forward and not just getting stuck, but also not making things worse. And so finding that middle zone is the key here. And it's the reason why I was able to be so successful with Ava, and why a lot of my clients have such amazing success with their dogs as well, following the same procedure. And so if any of that resonated with you, if you have a dog that is fear aggressive and is afraid of the world, lacks trust, lashes out when they are feeling cornered or insecure or fearful, then if you are looking for help, I want you to know that there is help available. So I have an online program that includes an online community, access to me for asking questions 24/7 and getting personalized, detailed feedback. I have a course called Nervous No More, which is all the information that anyone needs to take a dog from fearful, anxious, insecure to calm and confident in 16 weeks or less. There's over 5.5 hours of video content in that course. It's everything you need to know, no steps skipped, start to finish solution. But it's also designed to be fit in with a busy life. You only need to dedicate about 90 minutes per week to watching the content. So it's one episode of a show to short movie type of commitment per week. And then implementing your training with your dog per day only takes 10 minutes. So it's designed to be able to fit in around, work and kids and school and life happening as well. And the students on the program are seeing absolutely amazing results with everything from fear-based reactivity to fear of being in the vets and handling resource guarding, separation anxiety, all of those things. So if you are looking for help and you're looking for a solution that actually helps you form a better relationship with your dog, build their confidence, and overcome their issues in a full package, start to finish way, then definitely make sure that you check out the program in the description below. And I'd love to see you inside the community so that I can help you live a bigger, better life with your dog. That is my mission. So hopefully that all made sense and you got something out of this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. And I will see you in the next one.